Nothing honks me off more than an organization that purports to be a free market organization and for business and for nuclear, well, not for nuclear energy, but for energy and looking out for the best interests of Ohio manufacturers than an organization that doesn't do any of that. It's total, utter, complete nonsense. This organization has absolutely no credibility, and let me break it down for you. As many of you know, I've been a very big proponent of expanding research and development of nuclear technology inside the state of Ohio. I work with the E-Generation Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization, and we've inserted ourselves into educating our senators and our legislators. And what we have right now, we have Dick Stein, who's been gracious enough to push House Bill 104, which would do exactly that, would help to provide an accelerated environment for research and development of nuclear technology, not commercial activities, unless they're allowed by the NRC, of course, but research and development. Things that help to bring more business to the state of Ohio, things that would really help manufacturing for the state of Ohio. And then we have this guy here, which just, you know, it's so stupid it just boggles the mind. I'm sorry. Here's a guy that, oh, I work for the Ohio Manufacturers Association. Makes it big, sound big and official. And I have so many people that are underneath my membership. It's like, well, yeah, they probably are, they probably don't know what you're doing, or they probably all just manufacture wind turbines and solar panels. Because this would be idiotic for any machine shop inside the state of Ohio, anybody that's a fabrication shop to oppose. And so I hope the members of the Ohio Manufacturers Association see this letter, see this video, and call out Ryan Augsburger for how absolutely asinine, and I'm saying asinine, that this is. So what you see up here is a screenshot, or what you see down here, below here, is a screenshot, and it's of the Ohio Manufacturers Association webpage. It says, "Bill promotes unviable nuclear technology." The Ohio House Energy and Natural Resources Committee this week held a third hearing on House Bill 104. The legislation is intended to spur the development of molten salt reactor thorium power generation by creating public-private partnership for lobbying and a for-profit lobbying company to advance policy aimed at attracting research and development of the presently unviable technology. Under House Bill 104, the state-supported entities would be given eminent domain authority to seize private property to site new nuclear waste disposal sites in Ohio. Last week, a series of proponents appeared to testify in favor of the bill. The OMA has not yet provided testimony. However, the OMA, Ryan Augsburger, wrote the bill's primary sponsor, Representative Dick Stein Norwalk, this week to express concern. The bill will be discussed at the November 21st OMA Energy Committee meeting. Okay, nothing what it said in that information is true. I mean, we're talking Baghdad Bob bullshit. We're talking horrendous Adam Schiff type statements here of unbelievability. Just total BS. And I'm going to show you the letter, which is in that link there from that screenshot. And then I'm going to dissect the letter piece by piece and show you the references of where everything is, and just show you how much of a complete liar. I'm not talking about anything to where, oh, well, he just didn't know or anything. No, he's making statements that are going to cost people their lives. People die every day because of cancer. People die every day because we haven't went through all the medical isotopes because we don't have enough for testing. And we can save a lot of people. But it's ignorant assholes. I'm sorry, yeah, I said it. Assholes like this. They really tick me off if you haven't gotten that notice. At making such ludicrous comments. And I could see if he was somebody that legislators just brush off as being dumb and stupid, which they should, especially from this. But, this guy is supposed to be an intelligent man and, supposedly makes a decent living at the Ohio Manufacturers Association. So, again, we're going to dive into this here in just a second. So, here's the letter, and it's in its entirety. Haven't doctored it, haven't done anything to it. It's just that stupid. So, I'm going to read it to you first, and then we'll go through it paragraph by paragraph, and I'll show you why this is just so insanely idiotic. It's like, well, people can just say anything these days. Doesn't have to be true. We'll just make it up. At some point, I'm certain at some point Ryan Augsburger will be up in front of Congress to testify that he had sexual relations with Brett Kavanaugh in college. So that's how stupid this is. So let's take a read here. It says, "Dear Representative Stein, I write to convey concerns with House Bill 104. We understand from your sponsor testimony that the legislation is intending to create public-private partnerships to build thorium reactors and seize private property through eminent domain to offtake First Energy Solutions nuclear waste and out-of-state waste, utilize tax credit funding, and stand up a state-created for-profit company that can profit from all of this activity. The expansion of government eminent domain powers to seize property for nuclear waste storage is unwise. Nuclear waste is by definition a toxic material and deserves the expertise of federal regulators who are best equipped to safely solve this complex issue on a national basis. However, this bill would remove federal oversight and replace it with a new state board that may receive funding from various unrestricted, possibly foreign interests. Furthermore, the eminent domain authority under House Bill 104 is delegated to this unelected and unaccountable public-private partnership. Thorium energy production is not commercially viable today. It may be a better approach to work with Ohio's institutions of higher education to determine if state research assets can be utilized towards this purpose. Finally, the mission to make Ohio a leader in nuclear waste reduction and storage is downright bad public policy that will not promote Ohio's competitiveness to anyone other than radioactive polluters. I am sure you are aware that the decommissioning costs of Ohio's 2 existing nuclear power plants are not fully funded. This has been well documented in coverage of the First Energy Solutions bankruptcy case. Doesn't Ohio bear adequate risk of radioactive pollution already? Why add more? Great advances in technology happen every day in America, be it manufacturing or agriculture, healthcare, retail, industry, or energy. The power of markets drives business to innovate in order to compete. Manufacturers don't believe that government creates jobs. House Bill 104 constitutes a big government solution to a problem that does not exist. The bill is inherently anti-market and dangerous. As such, the Ohio Manufacturers Association respectfully urges you to reconsider this legislation. Thank you for your interest in these perspectives. Okay, so we're looking at the first paragraph here. We understand from your sponsor testimony that the legislation is intending to create a public-private partnership to build thorium reactors. No, not true. There's nothing in the legislation that says we're going to build thorium reactors. says does mention molten salt reactors. It mentions advanced nuclear technologies. Nowhere does it say thorium reactors. And thorium reactor, while it can be a molten salt reactor, it also can't be a molten salt reactor. So I'm not understanding where he's getting this, even though legislators have said, hey, we like thorium. There's nothing wrong with thorium, it's an element. It's also a nuclear fuel. Nothing wrong with that. But the thing is that it's not even mentioned in the legislation anywhere. You can go download the legislation, hit Control F to do a find, and search thorium. Not even in there. Then it says, and seize private property through eminent domain to offtake First Energy Solutions nuclear waste and out-of-state waste. Nothing in the legislation says that either. I ain't just pulling it right straight out of the butt here. That's the only thing that I can say is that there's nothing in there that says that House Bill 104 would allow the state of Ohio to take nuclear waste from out of state. It's not even legal from the federal government's perspective. And, state law can't override federal law. I mean, this is just stupid at this point. In that we're going to seize private property through the use of eminent domain. There is a section in there for the state authority that is created to have eminent domain, which, Ohio State Department of Transportation has eminent domain when you build a road. It's something that's quite common to give a state entity the ability to have eminent domain. But in this case, it's very much restricted to about 8 sites in the state of Ohio that aren't agricultural sites. And I'm certain that Ryan Augsburger, ring, 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 turned on the phone, called over to the Farm Bureau and said, hey, these guys are going to take all your farmland and turn it into nuclear waste storage. It's like, do I have to answer something that's so stupid? It's not funny. It's not even listed in the legislation, and it would be totally illegal to do anyhow. So there's that portion of it. And he makes eminent domain sound all big and evil. And again, I don't like when the government seizes land unwarrantedly, but that's not what this is. And there's a process that everybody goes through to make certain that this is a public necessity to be able to take land. This more than likely won't even be used, but making a big deal about it. And it says in there, you're going to utilize tax credit funding and stand up a state-created for-profit company that can profit from all this activity. And again, no. There is tax credit funding for a consortium, which is a for-profit company. It is designed as a for-profit company, not a public-private partnership. It is a for-profit company that's looking to develop nuclear technology in order to be able to make a profit from that technology that it develops. No different than companies that work with NASA. They have technology sharing agreements every day that NASA helps to develop technology with these companies and contractors. And then NASA's allowed to use that technology free of charge. And then that company's given an exclusive license to be able to utilize that technology everywhere else but NASA. So this is nothing new. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing evil about that. Don't know where he's coming from, but we're not looking to make, or House Bill 104 is not looking to make money from the storage of nuclear waste. Quite the contrary. If you look at everything that we've pushed, and we've helped push, this bill, we've been active components of it from our 501c4 active proponents of it, I guess I should say. There's nothing wrong with looking to make money from developing new nuclear technologies for companies that would do that. Quite frankly, if you said, hey, you're going to do all this work and you're not going to be rewarded for it, who wants to do the work? Got to have an incentive. That's an incentive to be able to do that. And again, that for-profit company is not the authority. House Bill 104 creates an authority and it creates a consortium. And the two are separate, totally separate. One, the authority is an extension of the state of Ohio, and the consortium is not an extension of the state of Ohio. So there's nothing bad or wrong going on there. It's just made up just like many other state organizations like the Ohio Power Siting Board, the Ohio Department of Transportation. These things operate very similarly to that. Okay, so now we're moving on to the next sentence. The expansion of government eminent domain powers to seize property for nuclear waste storage is unwise. Well, legislation doesn't do that, so there. Nuclear waste is by definition a toxic material and deserves the expertise of federal regulators who are best equipped to safely solve this complex issue on a national basis. Well, gasoline is a toxic substance. Yeah, we put it in our gas tanks every day. We use it very safely every day. It's also explosive. In fact, I would gather to bet there's probably more of a chance of you getting in an accident and having your fuel tank explode than what there is to be exposed to toxic and deadly radiation from a commercial nuclear power plant accident or even from a research facility. But, somebody out there might be able to prove me wrong on that, but I don't think so. But anyhow, and it says federal regulators who are best equipped to safely solve this complex issue on a national basis. Well, they really haven't solved the issue now, have they? And I think that there are people at Ohio State University here in the state of Ohio that will tell you, you know what? We do a lot of good research and development here on our own. I bet you there's also some people, I think it's in Barberton, Ohio, where we have nuclear fuel services that helps to develop and make parts for our nuclear navy that would argue that point. We also have other companies like Materion. They're in Ottawa County, very large company. They do business with the aerospace and the nuclear industry. So, this is just idiotic at this point. But, let's by all means continue to read to see the level of stupidity that we do have here. However, this bill would remove federal oversight and replace it with a new state board that may receive funding from various unrestricted, possibly foreign interests. House Bill 104, if you took the time to read it, it does not remove federal oversight. That's an impossibility. There's no law that says that they can pass on that authority to the state of Ohio. We can share that authority, but we still have federal oversight then. So House Bill 104 looks at, and says, hey, can we sign a cooperative research and development agreement, much like what China did with our Department of Energy? And can we operate under the auspices of the Department of Energy or our military branches? Is that possible for us to do? Or is it only foreign governments that can do that? I would argue the 1954 Atomic Energy Act, the way that it is written, never intended for a foreign government to have more access and more rights to develop nuclear technology than a state. To believe so kind of boggles the mind. And as far as foreign interests go, House Bill 104 specifically spells out about foreign interests and about how much ownership that they can have in the consortium. Has nothing to do with the nuclear authority either. So, you know, I mean, just again, wrong, 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 wrong. I don't know how more wrong a person could be on such a subject. Furthermore, I'm sorry, this is reading, finish reading the sentence here. Furthermore, the eminent domain authority on House Bill 104 is delegated to this unelected and unaccountable public-private partnership. Wrong. Just wrong. Eminent domain is given to the authority, which is an extension of the Ohio state government. We have elected officials, primarily the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the Senate President. They all make appointments of 3 people each to a board. So if they go off and they make these terribly bad, unpopular decisions, guess what? That's a reflection of the Speaker of the House, the governor, and the Senate President. If they make really bad decisions, guess what? The Senate President, the Speaker of the House, the governor, they're not going to be reelected. So yes, there is accountability. As much accountability as that we have with our state organizations now, with the Ohio Power Siting Board, with the Ohio Department of Transportation. You can go on with, political appointees are, common in the state of Ohio for that. So, I mean, Ryan Augsburger apparently doesn't know how our state government is currently composed and how it currently runs. That's the only thing that I can deduce from this pathetic letter, which is rabidly anti-nuclear. That's the only thing that I can think of. Okay, next sentence. Finally, the mission to make Ohio a leader in nuclear waste reduction and storage is downright bad public policy that will not promote Ohio's competitiveness to anyone other than radioactive polluters. I am sure you are aware that the decommissioning costs of Ohio's 2 existing nuclear power plants are not fully funded. This has been well documented in coverage of the First Energy Solutions bankruptcy case. Doesn't Ohio bear adequate risk of radioactive pollution already? Why add more? Well, Ryan, your focus on this seems to be about importing waste. That's not what House Bill 104, the vision, the mission, or anything states that. You got this, hard on for importing waste that nobody's ever even talked about or discussed. I think you've got a problem with First Energy Solutions. I really do there. Really think that you want to see them go out of business and have all these windmills and solar panels out there. That's another discussion, but hey, Mr. Wind turbines and solar panels guy, I realize that First Energy Solutions is like the devil to you, but we're not associated with them. The E-Generation Foundation have been to their facilities, have had discussions with them. But no, they haven't given us any donations. They haven't given us any money or anything like that. So, I'm sure you'll cook up bullshit, that way too. But, again, at this point you have no credibility because you've made statements about a piece of legislation which is easily accessible and easily read. It doesn't even mention it in the analysis of the LSC analysis, the Legislative Services Commission analysis of House Bill 104. But, at this point, I think it's safe to say that you're anti-nuclear. And I also think that's safe to say that you're anti-manufacturing at this point. And that's pretty ironic being a vice president of the Ohio Manufacturers Association. You're saying that radioactive polluters. Well, let's take a look at that. If you put something into your trash can, is that polluting the environment? Seriously. No, that's storing it. And then you're going to hopefully recycle it or take it to a facility to where you're not going to have it pollute the environment. Nuclear waste is stored very safely, I might add, in cask or in a pool at a nuclear facility right now. Hopefully, what we want to do is use that for fuel at some point in the future with a new generation nuclear reactor, which we hope could be developed here in the state of Ohio. We're hoping that we can use some of this small modular reactor technology so that these things could be built on an assembly line. And guess what? State of Ohio knows something about assembly line production. We're talking about, potentially over years building thousands of these reactors that can consume our nuclear waste that we have now that would last for hundreds of thousands of years. And your proposal is do nothing, put everything on the federal government. Then if the federal government can't solve the problem, then hey, it's our problem and we're just going to ignore it. We're going to put our heads in the sand and we're going to cry and we're going to whine that the federal government didn't do something about it. Well, I like to be proactive. I think that there are a lot of people out there that want to be positive and they want to be very proactive too. We do have a problem. We do have nuclear waste. And there are a lot of companies, there are a lot of startup people out there, there are a lot of scientists out there that are much smarter than myself and damn well much smarter than Ryan Augsburger on the subject of what do we do with nuclear waste. And, I really love this, Ed File with Elysium Technologies and the design of this reactor that he has that, just yum, 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 just eats that nuclear waste right up. Now, is that possible? Does he have a design flaw? Well, you don't know until you start doing the research. But you're just saying, well, no, we don't want to do anything. And, we want to bury our heads in the sand about Yucca Mountain and everything. That really, really seems very foolish. Seems downright dumb. But then again, almost everything that you've said in this letter has a level of stupidity that, is equatable with Baghdad Bob. And for those of you who don't know who Baghdad Bob is, he was the communications director for, not Osama bin Laden, but I'll think of it here. He was the head of Iraq at the time, but he was very famous for telling people that, not to worry, that, that the Iraqi forces were going to decimate the Americans while CNN was playing side by side of American tanks rolling through the capital of Iraq and destroying it. And this was in Gulf War I, I believe it was. So yeah, I mean, it's that level of stupidity. Again, I can take you directly to the legislation at, how stupid this is. Says, I am sure you are aware the decommissioning costs of Ohio's 2 existing nuclear power plants are not fully funded. Well, I guess that really depends on how you want to decommission these reactors. Now, we can look at 2 examples here in Ohio. We can look at the Dayton Wright-Patterson Air Force Base reactor, which was very similar to the reactor that was on Plumbrook Station. Now, I know these numbers are close. I know that they're not exact, but the reactor at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base was, less than $2 million to decommission. I think it was like right around $1 million to decommission. The reactor that was at Plumbrook, however, they decommissioned it. They turned it back into green space, and it costs, I think, right around $280 million. Now, what did they do differently? Well, in the case of the Dayton reactor, they entombed it in concrete. Perfectly safe to be around it now. They have to do some monitoring, but much cheaper than the $280 million. Essentially 280 times the cost to take it back to green space. Don't know why you would want to make us suffer like that unless you were trying to prop up another wind technology or solar technology to make something cost far more than what it has to. But hey, if that's what Ohio manufacturers want, they want to pay more. I think you have this cognitive dissonance on that later on in the letter that they don't like paying high prices and stuff. But hey, again, the level of stupidity is Baghdad Bob stupidity. So let's keep on plugging through this and see what other stupidity can be gleaned from this letter. Okay, now let's talk about the last paragraph, last few sentences of this and how utterly ridiculous this is coming from the Ohio Manufacturers Association. Now, it sounds very free market, very conservative, very capitalistic. So let's read it here. Great advances in technology happen every day in America, be it in manufacturing or agriculture, healthcare, retail industry, or in energy. The power of the markets drives businesses to innovate in order to compete. Manufacturers in Ohio don't believe the government creates jobs. House Bill 104 constitutes a big government solution to a problem that doesn't exist. The bill is inherently anti-market and dangerous. As such, the Ohio Manufacturers Association respectfully urges you to reconsider this legislation. Now, I'm a huge proponent of capitalism. I'm a huge proponent of the free market. So when you say great advances of technology happen every day in America, be it in manufacturing or agriculture, healthcare, retail, industry, or in energy, the power of the markets drives businesses to innovate in order to compete. Manufacturers don't believe that Ohio government creates jobs. I agree with that. I just wish the Ohio Manufacturers Association would. Ohio Manufacturers Association up to this point hasn't. Ohio Manufacturers Association up to this point has been very supportive of mandates for the renewable portfolio standards that Ohio has. Was very much against them being repealed, the mandates. They're very much for big government subsidies for wind and solar and ethanol. And Ohio is an agricultural state. It's kind of a death knell for a politician to say, hey, we don't need that. But, us people that live up here on Lake Erie, yeah, we don't like those harmful algae blooms. And people are getting sick. There is an ALS concentration every time that we have a harmful algae bloom. And so, while we can't prove causation yet, there is a strong correlation with harmful algae blooms and I don't want to say an abundance, but more of an occurrence of ALS in our population up here. So, and that's not just relegated to North Shore. I mean, we have Grand Lake St. Mary's practically in the middle of the state that has this problem as well. This comes from the runoff from farmers producing corn and soybeans for biofuels. Yeah, and I know there are going to be farmers who are like, oh no, how can you prove that and everything like. It's like, guys, come on. That's settled science. That a lot of this has come as a result of farmers and stuff. And people say, well, people put it on their lawns and everything in minuscule amounts. Yes, everything contributes to harmful algae blooms. This is true. Not going to argue that point. But if you have a cut on your finger, a small paper cut on your finger compared to a knife stuck into your thigh with a huge gaping wound, which do you fix first? You really if you're going to be honest, you don't fix the paper cut first. You fix the big bleeding gaping hole in your leg first, and then you go for the paper cut. So, again, kind of got off subject there, but yes, I agree wholeheartedly with these sentiments. The problem is coming from an organization that has been a proponent of big government interference into our markets to the point where viable technologies become unviable because of this government interference. It boggles the mind. And we do have people like Terry McClure, that was past president of the Ohio Farm Bureau, owns lots of land, that has wind turbines on it in Paulding County. They are good friends with the Ohio Manufacturers Association and start up these front organizations of conservatives for renewable energy. Yeah, right. You can't be a conservative if you're pushing a big government program like that. Sorry, it's not happening. Now, people say, well, how do you rectify, giving tax credits for this technology? Well, the way that I can justify, the way that I can rationalize that is that the federal government has almost pushed our nuclear power business out of business. And that is by bastardizing the market in favor of wind and solar. Even FERC does this and PJM does this because they don't value all the metrics of the grid. And if it was left up to a truly free market, it would be us, the people, that decide what we value in that marketplace. But right now, government or government-appointed organizations like PJM and FERC are the ones that make those decisions. And so there's not a level playing field. There's not a fair market to provide the metrics that the market values. And so, a lot of people just say, well, isn't it just delivering electrons? Well, of course, there's generation and there's distribution. That's what we all know. There's spinning reserves, that you need to have. There's reactive power that needs to be put in place there. There's frequency control that you need to have. And then you've got to look at predictability. You've got to look at dispatchability of power, things like that help to make your grid more robust. And those are things that, while they say that they're taken into account, I think PJM tries to make that argument. Really, it's not. There's a capacity market, and then there's the market where energy is actually sold. Capacity market is supposed to guarantee resiliency and security. No, doesn't. And that's why we don't have a free market. And we can offset the negative effects of what the federal government does with tax credits here in the state of Ohio to allow technologies such as nuclear to have a fighting chance against technologies, renewable technologies, which are creating an economic bubble that, when they burst, will have disastrous consequences for any community, any state, any county that has really hung their hat on wind and solar, or any other intermittent renewable technology that's not viable by itself in the marketplace. And it's been proven time and again that the moment you talk about taking away the subsidies for wind and solar, they come back and they say, oh, you can't do that, and yet in the same breath they're saying, oh, well, we're producing energy cheaper than coal, we're producing energy cheaper than natural gas. Well, then why do you need the subsidy if you're producing energy that cheap? Real reason is they're not producing energy that cheap. They're creating the mirage of creating energy that cheap because they offset these with subsidies. Other people come back and say, well, all these other technologies get subsidies. They do. they get subsidies for national security reasons. We can't pump oil as cheaply as what they do in Saudi Arabia. Our oil costs a lot more to pump. We also have a lot more rules. We have, labor laws, minimum wage laws. We tell people how long that they can work and stuff, and a lot of those are ignored in other countries. And so, in order for us to keep, jobs in the oil industry, the only way that we could do that is to um, remunerate, pay back the amount that those laws cost, and those were subsidies. So that was so that America could have not energy independence, but more energy security. We provided those subsidies for. Wind and solar is not that. They don't provide any um, solution to any problem. Not even to, if you're a big believer in climate change or global warming, um, they they're not proven to help that. There are a lot of people that are out there that love wind and solar, and they will, say, "Hey, this is better than what we have now." And I'm like, no, it's not, because you can't consider that technology in a vacuum. You have to consider that technology as it's implemented into the grid. And you have wind and solar that have complementary power supplies, so that when you call for it, you flip your switch in your house, you have energy, even though that the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining. You have a backup or complementary power supply, and then you have cycling problems when your wind is gusty, really big gusts of wind on and off all day long, or you have a cloudy day and it's sunshine, then no sunshine, sunshine, no sunshine. You have these problems that it makes the legacy technology cycle on and off, which damages equipment, their equipment, which raises energy costs, and it also produces more pollution. So the case is not settled on wind and solar as much as people want you to believe that, hey, settled, case closed. No. Yeah, when you look at a solar panel just by itself or a wind turbine just by itself, yes, I agree. It's very clean, very friendly, but that's not the way that our grid operates. And you say, well, let's just change the grid. Well, that's easier said than done. Our grid's been around for 100 years. It's been refined, and it's been made to be better all along this road, and more vibrant, more robust. And arguably, adding more unpredictability and more unnecessary complexity due to renewables has made our grid less robust and less reliable and less resilient. So, at the end of the day, when you look at this, and saying that nuclear constitutes a big government solution, like they're somehow picking winners and losers. Our federal government has already picked winners and losers, and it has said wind and solar are going to win. And yet, even after we've been subsidizing wind and solar since the 70s, so you got the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2010s, and soon to be into the 2020s, 40, 50 years. We've spent a couple of $1 trillion on wind production tax credits and subsidies and everything. We spent a couple $1 trillion on nuclear as well. But for nuclear, they produce nearly 20% of all the energy inside the United States. And after $2 trillion of spending on wind and solar, they produce less than 2%. So where's your better value, especially if you're looking for clean energy, if you're looking for a reduced carbon environment, a decarbonized environment? Wind and solar is not the way to go. Yet, hey, we got the Ohio Manufacturers Association saying we need more wind and solar. We need more wind and solar, which pumps up the price of energy. They say that doesn't. It does, because you just pay it to the federal government rather than to the state government or through your paying your rates. House Bill 6, another one that we just went through here in Ohio. House Bill 6 did not raise your energy costs. It lowered your energy costs. Yet, here you have the company, Ohio Manufacturers Association, very much against House Bill 6. Why is that? Aren't they just wind and solar people? That's all that organization is, and they're willing to sacrifice some of their largest customers, like I think Alcoa was one of them. When you look at Timken Steel, I believe was one of them that left. Ford left them because they all wanted the renewable portfolio standards gone. But you had the OMA, Ohio Manufacturers Association, which is kind of in league and in lockstep with Bricker and Eckler, which is a very, very powerful lobbying law firm in the state of Ohio that people still try to convince me and say, well, they're a Republican organization. No, no. If they're a Republican organization, they're a Republican organization in name only, and I hate using that word rhino, and I'm not going to use it. They're not rhinos, they're anti-capitalists, and they're big government advocates. Is what they are, and they have no concept of what a real free market is, because they keep on repeating that we got to allow wind and solar to compete in the free market. It's like they never have, because they've always been subsidized to such an extent that they've severely bastardized our free markets and sacrificed our freedom of choice in the marketplace by making something appear cheaper than what it actually is, and then they've promoted it as saving the earth and everything, and it's like yeah, I don't believe that. Some people might believe that, and I just don't think that the science is there. I don't think that you're truthful with yourself. I think that you are angry at the world and angry at other people, and call them dumb if you even question that renewables may not be clean. But when you actually follow things through, I think that there are a lot of questions that come to mind. But anyhow, I'm at the end of the letter. I hope that everybody out there, after seeing this, realizes how bad OMA is, that nobody should belong to an organization that is so disingenuous and deceitful. A company that's evil, that doesn't want to see us develop medical isotopes to save people, that doesn't want to see cheap energy be built, that doesn't want to see job creation flourish in the state of Ohio, that wants to make our grid much more complex, unnecessarily complex, much less robust, and much more costly. I think that every manufacturer needs to sit down and take a hard look, if they're a member of the Ohio Manufacturers Association, and say, is this doing good for the future of Ohio? Is this doing good for the future of business inside the state of Ohio? I don't think that it is. And I really, if you want to talk to me, you can get a hold of me on Facebook, John Paul Morrow. You can get a hold of me there. I'm ugly enough that you can recognize my profile anywhere on there, and let's have a talk. I'll give you my phone number, and you can contact me through that. You can contact me through the E-Generation Foundation as well. But these organizations need to be called out. They need to be held accountable, and they can't be a propaganda organization anymore. They can't be so disingenuous anymore. These guys are masquerading as that they are free market capitalists that are all for the free market system, and that's the last thing that they are. Let's just be truthful. That's the last thing that they are. These guys have more in common with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Nancy Pelosi than what they have in common with pro-business Trump. And as much as you hate Trump, and as much as you may love Bernie Sanders, and as much as you may love AOC, I think it's very evident that business, small business and big business, absolutely loves and adores Trump because of how good that the economy is. Please share this video. It's super long, I know. Probably very little people will actually watch it start to finish. But I'm putting it out there so I can reference it. And if you don't like it, hey, feel free to bash me. I don't care. This is my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. So,